Drive Time Dialectic. So I hope that you guys are all doing well. Hope that you are paying attention to the things that are happening around you and not just the hype on everything that the media is pushing. Because if all you're paying attention to is what the media is pushing right now, you're not paying any attention at all to East Palestine, or Palestine, I guess that's how they say it, Ohio. You're probably paying an undue amount of attention to weather balloons and spy balloons, and you're also probably paying way too much attention to, I don't know, the congressional hearings that are going on as it relates to a particular event that took place back a couple years ago at the Capitol. You're probably paying way too much attention to the reality of the fact that we now know, like I said months ago when it happened, that we blew up, we being the U.S., the United States blew up the Nord Stream pipelines. So, I mean, I'm not saying don't pay attention to those things, but all those things are distractions. And really, I think they're distractions to keep our eyes off of East Palestine, Ohio. Have we not noticed the media is not covering this? And the media that is covering East Palestine, Ohio, they get arrested. At least in the case of one gentleman, he got arrested and held for several hours before he was finally released. And I think they've dropped his charges, is the last that I heard. But something else happened, and it's no mistake that the news as it's breaking on this situation in the greater Lansing area, the Michigan State University campus, involving the shooter that committed a wicked and evil act. I mean, we have to be honest. What he did was wicked and evil. There's no doubt about it. I don't condone it. I'm not going to stand behind it and say that, well, he had a gun, so I can't comment. I do need to comment, but so do you. But what you guys really need to be paying attention to, thanks, OG Snoop, you know what I mean when I say us. The world looks at the United States and they look at the people. They don't just look at the government, or at the state. They look at the people and say, look at what you people in the U.S. did, and I'll stand by that. We have to understand that people don't make a distinction between us and our rulers, if you will. But anyway, as we look around, this event in Lansing, Michigan last night, as wicked and evil as it is not happening in a vacuum. We have a sitting president who came out and announced that he's all for like massive restrictions on firearms, even more gun control, banning of assault weapons, and the language that he used, the speech that as it was written for him, made it very clear that they consider handguns assault weapons now too. You have to go back and listen to how many times he said semi-automatic pistols, and then lumped it in with the AR-15s and all that other stuff. So, I mean, it's a reality. Here in my home state of Minnesota, they are set to pass into law massive firearm restrictions, and now we have this event in Lansing, Michigan. And we have to ask ourselves, why do evil people do the evil things that they do? And why is the timing always seem to be just right? I'm not saying that this was a setup by any stretch of the imagination. We don't have any evidence either way yet for the whack jobs who see everything as a false flag, and the whack jobs who see everything as a result of white gun owners. We just don't have any evidence. But what we do have evidence of was that this man, who has been now accused and deemed the guilty party, was an accused felon. And the news as it was coming out was that he was a convicted felon. And of course, a lot of us ran with that. Now, I'm going to say we need to continue to run with that. Because if he is indeed the guy who did the shooting, if he is the guy who killed the people and injured the others, we need to very much stay on top of the reality that he was accused of committing a felony. Now, whether or not we agree with the felony he was charged with, the law in Michigan stated that what he did was a felony. And the prosecutor and the judge had to agree on a plea deal that took that felony, broke it down to, I think it was a misdemeanor or a gross misdemeanor, put him on probation for several years, and then when he was released from probation, was allowed to have his firearms and weapons back. Which, there again, if you're a violent individual and you commit a crime with a firearm, you should, let's be honest, you should pay your debt to society, and you should have to jump through some hoops to retain or regain that particular right and that liberty back. I'm not saying that every single person who commits a felony should lose their right to keep and bear arms, but people who commit violent felonies, violent crimes with firearms, definitely there's something that we need to manage there. Now, some of this could have been prevented in the eyes of many on the left if these laws were just enforced the way they were supposed to be enforced, right? We hear that all the time. We need stiffer gun laws. We need this. We need that. We need common sense gun control, right? And I say the prosecutor in this gentleman's case, and I say gentleman because I don't want to call him, is why did they allow a plea deal to take place if they're really serious about curbing gun violence, right? If we're really serious about curbing gun violence, why on earth was this allowed to plead down? And the argument was, well, he didn't have a history of violent criminal behavior, so we thought this would be best for him. How'd that work out for Lansing, Michigan last night, my friends? Now, I believe if you enforce laws against particular crimes, especially crimes of violence, harm to others, theft, burglary, any of that, if we actually enforce those, we would prevent many crimes from happening. Had this individual, and I don't know this for a fact, but maybe, just maybe, the onus for what happened in Michigan falls on the prosecutors who didn't prosecute the crime that they should have been prosecuting according to state law. There again, I don't think you should have to have a permit to own a firearm. I don't think you should have to have a permit, because what is a permit? A permit's nothing more than a state-sanctioned piece of paper that says we're giving you permission to exercise your constitutional rights and liberties, right? But that's what their law says, and their law was abdicated by the prosecutor and by the judge in this situation. So they own that. Now, be that as it may, everyone has come out of the woodwork on the left and used this tragic event committed by one person, reportedly, committed by a person who clearly had an axe to grind, who had an agenda, and they're now out there railing. Gretchen Whitmer this morning in her press conference at 7 o'clock Central Time came out and demanded that, basically insinuating and demanding that more be done, making it very clear what her agenda is going to be going forward. I have come out and said this plays into their hands. Now, whether it's staged or not, I don't know. But this does play into their hands. And anybody who speaks out against that, anybody who calls this out for what it is, a tragic act by a wicked person, hell-bent on committing an evil crime against his fellow man. People are like, too soon, how callous, how dangerous of you, how ill-informed of you to come out and speak out. But you know what's missing is the lack of empathy on their part for the grieving family members in the Lansing area and the family members of those who were injured and died. Yes, Lansing's in grief. But why is it the only approved statements that are to be made right now are empathy for the families, which there should be, and an outcry for more sensible gun control? Those are the only approved statements that we're seeing. Anybody who says anything different is being told you're callous. We have to get out in front of this, and we have and say, you do not get to drive your agenda on the back of this. And then we also have to look at it, and we have to start asking ourselves, why now? When all of this other garbage is happening in our nation, in our republic, when all of these other things are going on, when we should be paying attention to the tragedy that's happening in East Palestine, Ohio, the people who are going to be suffering far more from what's going on down there, which is a clear failure on the part of the federal government, the federal state, and a clear failure on the part of failure on the part of the railroad industry, which runs roughshod over people constantly. When this train derails and this chemical leaks out, and they make the decision to burn it off and let it leak out, and now this 200 miles some radius of effect is taking place, and probably even further, nobody's talking about it. No one wants to talk about it at all. Where's our Secretary of Transportation? Where's our president? Where's our vice president? You know what? I would take some right now and talk about the truth of what's happening here, how it happened, why it happened, what's going to be done to prevent it from happening in the future. Because, as we know, the railroads are in bed with the state. They are in bed with the state. That's the very definition of fascism, except they're cooperating with others. And Biden isn't going to talk about it. He's not going to say a word. He's not going to say a thing. So all these other distractions are taking place around us, and it's having a twofold effect. It's really got people talking about maybe it is time. Maybe it is time for us to do something. And you go check out my Twitter feed. Anyway, every question that I've asked, what do you call sensible gun control? What does that look like? Is more and more federal state control over firearms. So not only is this working as a distraction to take people's eyes off of East Palestine, right? Palestine, whatever again. Not only is it working to take people's eyes off of that, it's enough firearms one way or another, and can be swayed by the emotional appeal to the argument that we've got to do more. And I'm going to ask, how much more to do? Murder is already illegal, ladies and gentlemen. Murder is 100% illegal in the United States. Some states allow for self-defense that ends in the taking of a life. That's killing. The reality is that we're not doing enough to deal with the issues that are actually going on. What it is. Let's say this was a pissed off man who decided to go victimize some people that he deemed to be his enemies. Right? Let's say that's what it was. Was anybody aware of him? Health and emotional health like, right? And last week on Veteran Nation, I had my friend Jake from Guns and Mental Health, which is a show put out by Walk the Talk America, which is a firearms industry related organization. that is meant to encourage people to seek mental health treatment and help, and not be afraid of losing their firearms, because they're trying to build a network of mental health professionals who are not going to have their first response be to a person who says that they're feeling suicidal or they're depressed, is then immediately have their gun stripped from them. Because there are many people out there, veterans and former law enforcement and others, who are comfortable with firearms, and they use firearms as a form of therapy. And veterans in particular are terrified that if they say, look, I'm feeling depressed, I have thoughts of suicide, that they're the one thing, which is why a lot of people never seek help. That's why a lot of people never go out there and try and get the help they really need. They never try, because they're terrified that the thing that they cherish, in the sense of their liberties and a sense of cathartic release, therapy, if you will, therapeutic shooting is the thing. It's real. A lot of these people won't seek it because they've been told if they do, they're going to lose their guns. Did this guy have mental health issues? Did he ever receive the kind of help that he should have been receiving? Now, mark my word, this is going to disappear off the radar. And it's going to be because it doesn't fit a right narrative. We have to understand that. They tamp this down, and they'll make it about something else, but they won't make it about what it is about, which is an evil guy had an agenda and an axe to grind, and he went looking for easy victims. We have to be actively out there on social media and other platforms pushing against these agitprops who are going to use this to their advantage. We have to push them into corners. We have to make them expose themselves. The leftists who are for draconian gun control measures are going to use this, and they are not equipped philosophically. They're not equipped historically and constitutionally for the fight. They are not. We are. The paleo-conservatives, the paleo-libertarians, the Mises type of libertarians, and maybe some of your more normative libertarians, we're equipped. We're equipped for this argument. And not be afraid to speak on it soon and early and often. We have to. Because the more we remain callous, the more fights they're going to win. And let them call us callous. I'll say, if one student in the first few minutes of the issue in Lansing last night, of the event in Lansing last night, if one student in the early moments would have been allowed to have a firearm on him, as the Constitution states, this guy would have been taken out in a heartbeat. And you cannot rely on law enforcement to protect you in these situations. They're just not equipped for it. Without having a cop on every floor of every building, of every place where anything like this can happen, law enforcement is never going to prevent people from dying. They can't. They cannot. And the courts have ruled that they're not obligated to. I'm not taking away from the officers who went out and put their lives on the line. But they didn't even bring the guy down. He brought himself down. Where are you on individuals? Be you libertarian, conservative, paleo-libertarian, whatever it might be. Are you constitutionally minded, constitutional originalists? Are you ready to engage in this fight at the moment that it starts? Or are you going to sit back on your haunches and let them win the argument because you're too busy being worried that you're going to look like a callous individual for talking? You have to be willing to come up early on, well before they do. Put them on the defensive. Make them look like the morons that they are. Make them look like the intellectually inferior people that they actually are. We have to. Or we lose. And we've been losing a lot for the last 20 years. Tune in tonight for Veteran Nation. Mike, Skipper Arthur, and I are going to be talking about this and some other issues and what you really should be focusing on. So that starts at about 7:15 Central Time. There will be a link on my Twitter profile to catch it when it starts. I hope that you guys tune in, and stay tuned. There could be some interesting news tomorrow on my channel here at Minnesota Black Robe Regiment. Like this, share this. If you're not subscribed, do so. Until next time, my friends, fight for your liberty. It is yours. Fight for your freedom. It belongs to you. It's Sic Semper Tyrannis.